All right, thanks, Kristen. We're following breaking news out of Paris this morning. Officials in Paris say 12 people are dead and 7 others are injured after a gunman stormed offices of a French newspaper there. This is video just into our newsroom. France has raised its alert to the highest level after the government calls the shooting a terrorist attack. Police and a witness say masked gunmen, 2 of them with automatic weapons, stormed the offices and escaped in 2 cars. We'll continue to monitor this and bring you the very latest as it becomes available.
On to dramatic video taken by an Albuquerque police officer's lapel camera during a shooting that injured him.
Everything unfolded in a matter of seconds. We're getting a look at that video and must warn you, it's tough to watch. 2:30 Saturday morning, DWI officer Lou Golson pulls over a silver Isuzu on San Mateo near Montgomery. He approaches a still-running SUV with his flashlight and tells Christopher Cook to turn it off. In just seconds, investigators say that's when shots broke out.
Turn it off.
APD says suspected shooter Christopher Cook fired 5 times in that short span. Golson was struck 3 times, but from his back, Golson returns fire. However, the shooter does get away. Backup did arrive, but much later. By that time, Christopher Cook was gone. The man police say you see in that video pulling the trigger is still behind bars this morning.
And he's set to appear in court in just hours this morning. This after BCSO caught suspected shooter Christopher Cook yesterday purely by chance walking down the street. We're learning more about Cook and his lengthy criminal past. News 13's Catherine Mazzone has been following this story for days. She's in the Newsplex with more now. Catherine?
That's right, Adam. Good morning. We've discovered 36-year-old Cook has spent more than a third of his life serving time behind bars, and it all started nearly 2 decades ago. His most recent arrest, of course, yesterday morning at around 4 a.m. when Bernalillo County deputies found him staggering down a street in northwest Albuquerque. After they realized he was the wanted man, they made an arrest. APD says Cook is the man who shot Officer Lou Golson on Saturday during a traffic stop. Golson was shot 3 times. Now, it's just the most recent offense in a long line of run-ins with the law. Cook was first arrested back in 1998 and kept getting himself into trouble for the next 3 years for breaking into cars, stealing guns, and armed robbery. He spent more than 4 years in prison for those offenses, and just a few short years later, he led Torrance County on a chase in a stolen garbage truck. That's 6 more years of lockup. He got out a year ago, and friends said he was getting his life back on track.
He was looking for a job, and it seemed like he was really trying to work, trying to get his life back together.
Oh, he got back to his old ways, according to police, stealing cars from local dealerships. They said he would ask for a test drive and then take off when employees weren't looking. Now, that includes the silver Isuzu Cook was driving the morning police say he shot Officer Lou Golson. Now, Chief Gordon Eden says finding Cook was tough because everyone who was close to him stopped associating with him. Back to you, Adam.
Catherine, thanks. Coming up in our next half hour, we're going to tell you how police figured out Cook was their man long before they nabbed him.
And as Catherine mentioned, Cook was no stranger to law enforcement. Again, in 2007, he was accused of taking that garbage truck, which deputies say he was using it in a series of home invasions in Torrance County. Cook did not go quietly when they caught up with him near Moriarty.
Started running into things, running to vehicles, through people's yards. It quickly became a very high-profile chase and was aiming for construction workers. His demeanor for the public safety was there was none. There was zero.
That was Sheriff Heath White. He was in on that chase and says Cook pulled out a butcher knife, taunting them. Spike strips disabled the trash truck, but he was still on the run and ran right towards a family playing in a yard. Deputies cornered him, drew their guns, and got him in custody after a long struggle. Sheriff White says he's especially relieved Cook is off the streets again.
This just goes more to show his demeanor that it hasn't changed. He will victimize anybody for his self-preservation or for his self-gain.
Meantime, 6:05, there's a new push to pass a bill that would make sure that first responders injured in the line of duty don't have to deal with a pay cut. It's called the Line of Duty Injury Act. That proposal would extend certain benefits to New Mexico officers, deputies, firefighters, corrections officers, and EMTs. It's a problem that got attention when Deputy Robin Hopkins was severely injured in a shootout with a suspect in October 2013. She has been out of work ever since and has had to take a pay cut. Now, with the shooting of APD officer Lou Golson, State Representative Paul Pacheco says it's important to get this bill passed in the upcoming session.
They're basically being victimized twice. They should not be penalized for doing their job and doing their job well and getting injured.
During last year's legislative session, the bill passed the House and Senate subcommittees, but did not make it to the Senate floor for a vote. You can count on KRQE News 13 to bring you the latest coverage on this story, both on air and online at krqe.com. There, you can see Cook's background and get his criminal complaints as well.
Time now 6:06. Federal authorities are investigating after a deadly shooting at the VA hospital. The shooting happened yesterday at the William Beaumont Army Medical Center in El Paso, Texas. The FBI says it will be questioning hundreds of patients at the hospital who may have been witnesses. The gunman shot and killed a doctor before taking his own life. Neither are being identified at this time. The motive is still not clear.
People are coming together to take back the trail where a runner was sexually assaulted in the Northeast Heights. Investigators say a man attacked a woman on that jogging trail last month. Despite a sketch of the suspect, he's still not been found. Several running groups are holding a run and walk this Saturday on that trail. Organizers say it's to show solidarity against this kind of violence. We have the event information online right now at krqe.com. Just search the words "Take Back Trail." A Colorado ski area, sheriff's deputies both facing criticism for not telling the public about a possible sexual predator at the resort. The sheriff's office says there have been 2 attempted assaults in the last 2 weeks at the Monarch Mountain ski area, but they only made it public on Friday. They say the suspect rode the ski lift with the victims, followed the teen girls down a ski run, then forced them into the woods and attacked them. The girls were able to escape. According to the Colorado Springs Gazette, deputies say the victims did not provide enough details about the suspect to put out a public warning.
Absolutely frightening. The Albuquerque Railyards is now being allowed to operate every weekend thanks to a vote by the City Advisory Board. The Railyards Sunday Market has been very popular, drawing thousands of visitors. The historic site features local farmers and artists. Now, despite yesterday's vote, a final decision needs to be made after contract negotiations are reached between the mayor's office and the Borellis community group that runs the market. The city wants to use 1 week in a month to rent out the venue for other events, possibly weddings.
Yeah, we spoke with them on KRQE yesterday, and it is interesting, all the different things that they can use in that space.
Yeah, it would be really neat to see something else there. Yeah. Come now, 6:00.
Thank you. The search is over. The man accused of shooting an APD officer is waking up behind bars, and we're now getting a better look at exactly what happened here during the shooting that sent that officer to the hospital. His lapel camera was rolling the whole time. Quick warning, though, before we show you that, the video is violent. Some people may find it disturbing. About 2:30 Saturday morning, DWI officer Lou Golson pulled over a silver Isuzu on San Mateo near Montgomery. As he approaches that SUV with his flashlight, things quickly take a drastic turn.
Turn it off.
That shooting happened right there. It's when APD says suspected shooter Christopher Cook opened fire on Golson 5 times, hitting him 3. While Golson's lying on his back, he returns fire, 8 shots in all. When the door opens, Officer Golson tries to fire one more time, but the shooter escapes. 2 minutes later, backup arrives. The gunman is nowhere to be found, just the car and the gun, police say, with his DNA on them.
The man seen in that video is now charged after a 3-day manhunt. And today, Christopher Cook could face a judge after BCSO found the career criminal by chance. As News 13's Catherine DeZone has learned from this arrest, APD knew who they were looking for days before he was caught. She's live in the newsroom with those details.
Well, that's right, Crystal. BCSO came across Cook walking near Coors and Edith early yesterday morning, but APD was already tracking Cook after finding his fingerprints on the stolen SUV he was driving the morning of the shooting.
Fingerprints were also found on an alcohol bottle inside of the vehicle. DNA evidence was also collected from a firearm that was left inside the vehicle.
According to a criminal complaint, APD knew by noon the day of the shooting those were Cook's fingerprints on a bottle of Johnny Walker and the stolen Isuzu. APD says he shot Officer Lou Golson on Saturday during a traffic stop. Golson was shot 3 times. Cook arrested yesterday at 4 a.m. in the morning by BCSO after 2 deputies found him staggering down a street in northwest Albuquerque. Now, after they realized he was a wanted man, they made the arrest. Just yesterday, a DNA match came back on the 9mm ditched in the SUV. So then why didn't APD release the info? They say they didn't want to scare Cook away. Chief Eden says had they released the name or a clear mugshot, it would have driven Cook deeper underground, and they'd likely still be looking for him. Now, we learned 36-year-old Christopher Cook has been locked up for more than a third of his life. It started with arrests dating back to 1998. Back to you, Crystal.
All right, thanks for that information, Catherine. We learned this is not the first time Cook faced charges for attacking a cop. In 2008, he pled no contest to assault on a peace officer.
Since Cook's arrest, we've been digging deeper into his past, and News 13 has learned that the 36-year-old has spent half his life as a professional criminal. For the past 17 years, Cook has been in and out of prison, and police say most recently he's been targeting used car dealerships. On Christmas Eve, Cook is accused of stealing a motorcycle from a B&W dealership before returning it and taking off. Police also believe he may have stolen a car from Automax on San Mateo, drove it to that car place on Wyoming, where he stole a gray Isuzu he was pulled over in. Those who know Cook say it was his drug addiction that fueled his life of crime.
I mean, the way he was when he was sober, he was willing to help anybody, to where he became so selfish once he's on it, and it was all about Chris. That was it.
Cook's former landlord tells News 13 that he kicked him out back in September when Cook tested positive for meth. News 13 has learned that when Cook was in his 20s, he served 4 years in prison on burglary and robbery charges.
And we're learning more about wounded Officer Golson and the dangers officers like him face while making traffic stops when they turn into anything but routine. News 13 went on traffic stops with Golson a decade ago. Retired Officer Nadine Hamby worked with the veteran officer at that time.
There are so many things that an officer has to keep an eye on. The location where you're pulling over the vehicle, whether you've called out the vehicle, how many people are in the vehicle, and you haven't even gotten out of the car yet. I think Officer Golson has made so many traffic stops in his career that his training, his expertise, it kicks into play, and he did everything that he possibly could have.
Now, Golson's made many ties with the community through his 31 years with APD, which has led to a lot of hospital visits.
The Bernalillo County Sheriff says his office has a personal connection with the shooting victim, and not just because he's worked with Officer Golson in the past.
More so because his son is a new graduate of our academy, so it became very personal to our agency.
And there is an outpouring of support for the officer during his recovery. Police say, in fact, one visit he received was especially touching.
It was actually a young man that he had issued a traffic citation to. I think that speaks to the character and the nature of our community.
The sheriff says his office and APD will work together in the future, something he says the community has been asking for.
What will happen to the reward money that was offered up for the arrest of Cook? Yeah, that reward money was up to 17 grand chipped in by the U.S. Marshal and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms, but nobody will get it because Cook was found and arrested by BCSO. Law enforcement is not eligible for that money. And KRQE will stay on top of this story, bringing you the latest coverage on air and online at krqe.com. That's where you can also see Cook's background and entire criminal complaint.
Time is 6:37. Investigators say they have arrested 2 people in connection with the shooting of 2 police officers in the Bronx. They've been identified as 24-year-old Jason Polanco and 28-year-old Joshua Kemp. Police say 5 plainclothes officers were responding to an armed robbery call last night when they spotted those suspects. Shots rang out when officers tried to approach them. Both the injured officers are expected to make a full recovery.
And we're following developing news this morning. Police still investigating what prompted a gunman to walk into a VA hospital and open fire, killing one person, then himself. It's left a community on edge. Officials say just after 3 yesterday, the shooter walked into a VA medical clinic in El Paso, shot a doctor who would later die. Authorities there say the gunman then turned the gun on himself.
The alleged shooter is dead, and we have one casualty. That casualty is deceased. All other VA patients and staff are safe.
The Army is not saying what prompted the shooting as the investigation continues. No names have been released at this time. The VA facility will remain closed today.
New and developing this morning, officials in Indonesia confirmed that the tail section of AirAsia Flight 8501 has been found. Take a look at this picture here. You can see in that image, the lettering matches that of the plane. For weeks, searchers have been scouring the Java Sea for that wreckage. Of course, the flight went missing December 28th with 162 people on board. Finding the tail section is significant because that's where flight recorders are located in an Airbus. Another body has also been found. That brings the total now to 40.